We humans believe that we are masters of our own fate. In reality, we are but pawns in the game of life. The previous rulers of our planet, the dinosaurs, reigned for 150 million years, but even they were finally overthrown. Whatever caused their extinction may herald the end of days for our civilization. Did Armageddon arrive in a shocking instant?
It is like trillions upon trillions of meteors hitting the atmosphere all at the same time.
You would have a poison gas cloud that would spread over the land.
Certainly within 3 months, I'm sure every dinosaur on the planet was dead.
Or was it a long, slow death in a perilous and merciless world?
The dinosaurs were doomed, whether or not there was an asteroid hitting the Earth.
The dinosaurs would have essentially been sitting ducks.
It's almost as though dinosaurs were being set up for failure.
The answer leads to a stunning conclusion.
We have no evidence that any single dinosaur lived long enough to be whacked by the meteorite. None. This you should find deeply disturbing.
What you think you know about what caused dinosaur extinction is not the whole story. Reality is much scarier. Past is prologue. The ultimate destiny of mankind reveals itself in the history of the first apocalypse. "65 million years ago, dinosaurs dominate the planet. If man were alive, he would be prey rather than predator. But severe changes are battering the global environment. They're provoking the natural forces of evolution, helping to knock the dinosaurs from power. Their extinction is just weeks away. This Tyrannosaurus Rex, the last of his kind, will die. A mass killing is underway on a scale that our world hasn't seen since. By the time it is over, no creature weighing more than 50 pounds will survive. In the oceans, a wide range of marine organisms ceases to exist. When the horror finally ends, more than half of all the diversity of life on the planet will be extinguished. Most famously, no dinosaurs will survive, not even the mighty T-Rex.
These were horrendous creatures that suddenly vanished off the face of the earth.
The dinosaurs, though, are not the first victims of a malicious Earth. There have been many others.
Most of the species that ever lived on this planet are extinct. From time to time, there are moments in the punctuated the history of Earth in which the rates of extinction have accelerated enormously. Those moments are called mass extinction.
Scientists recognize 5 major mass extinction events in the Earth's history. But the one that abolished the dinosaurs may be the most critical.
If dinosaurs hadn't become extinct, I don't think we'd be here. It's that simple. This wouldn't be a world dominated by mammals and birds, it'd be a world dominated by dinosaurs. So the extinction of dinosaurs is perhaps the one that affects us the most as humans.
The world we live in may already be in the throes of its own mass extinction. A new apocalypse.
The past mass extinctions have really shown that species can die in huge numbers. And I think the lesson from them is that our society is as fragile as any number of species, and that we should learn that what we have now can change quickly.
We humans are not immune. We may be doing stuff to the ecosystem that will kill lots of species and eventually kill us.
Human beings may have to face their own extinction.
Maybe whatever's out there in the universe is gunning for us.
What concerns me is what might destroy our civilization or hurt the Earth so much that life loses a lot of its meaning.
The string of events that erase the dinosaurs portends terrifying consequences for human civilization. So what was capable of killing these formidable creatures? At one time, they infiltrated every corner of our planet.
They were incredibly diverse and well-adapted animals to just about every environment you can imagine. We have big dinosaurs and we have small dinosaurs. And we have dinosaurs with feathers and dinosaurs that were warm-blooded.
Scientists have found evidence of an explosive impact formed 65 million years ago and centered in the Gulf of Mexico. Many believe that this is what provoked Dino Armageddon. But perhaps we've overlooked the true murderer. A rogues gallery of suspects stalked the dinosaurs' world. Brutal climates, rampaging disease, and titanic volcanoes among them. For decades, the dominant theory invokes a meteorite, possibly an asteroid or wayward comet. It's headed for an Earth that looks different than it does today. Ocean levels are higher, meaning the meteorite is headed for a splashdown landing in what is today Mexico. Before it arrives, though, it's just another day in the age of dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Plant eaters, like these armor-plated ankylosaurs, are flourishing throughout the continent. Meanwhile, two old rivals, the feared meat-eating Tyrannosaurus rex and the dangerous horned Triceratops, face off in a death match. Hundreds of miles to the south, an imposing Alamosaurus herd is on the move. Little do these giant beasts know, their lives will soon end. And then, the apocalyptic harbinger appears. A new star-like light blinks on overhead. This seemingly harmless speck is actually a meteor barreling toward Earth, heading directly for the Gulf of Mexico.
When it reached the top of the Earth's atmosphere, however, the sky would have exploded in light, creating what looks like fire falling from the sky. And of course, if you were that close to have seen that type of process, your life was going to be over in a matter of seconds. You were far too close to survive the initial stages of the impact event. That object was moving in excess of 40,000 miles per hour. When its leading edge touched the surface of the Gulf of Mexico, its trailing edge was still far up in the atmosphere, so it was a mountainous size object that was actually larger than Mount Everest.
And then, impact. This fateful instant forever alters the future of life on our planet.
When that object slammed into Yucatan of Mexico, first there was an instantaneous burst of heat and light, traveling at the speed of light.
At ground zero, everything vaporizes in a flash.
This was an immense amount of energy, equivalent to 100 trillion tons of TNT.
By some calculations, the impact exploded with a detonation greater than 5 billion atomic bombs.
We're not sure, but the best computer projections show that an object perhaps 6 miles across plowed into the Yucatan of Mexico, gouging out a crater of about 180 to 200 miles in diameter. And it was a life-changing event.
Rocky debris spews outward from the impact site, as far as 400 miles away. Storms of rubble cascade into piles up to 50 feet deep. All life within this range is simply buried alive. A horrifying cracking sound signals that the impact has also incited a vicious shockwave. As it radiates across the landscape, it carries 1,000-mile-per-hour winds in its wake. Not only massive beasts, but also entire forests yield to the shockwave.
Because the impact event also occurred in a shallow sea, it created essentially a big splash. And as we all know, when you splash something in the water, you create ripples. In this case, those ripples actually would have grown into tsunamis.
Anything near the coast, but out of range of the initial shockwave, soon faces the power of immense walls of water. 500-foot-high waves crash into coastlines all around the Gulf of Mexico and drown life for miles inland.
As dramatic as those events were, and as devastating as they were for life in the Gulf of Mexico region, they were not what was responsible for the mass extinction.
But the asteroid only clunked a few on the head. I mean, how many did the asteroid actually squash? So it is the effects of the asteroid that caused the kill.
To understand that, we have to look at what we call the vapor-rich plume of debris that is ejected from the crater.
The ejected rock and dust debris screams skyward at 50 times the speed of sound.
This vapor-rich plume has so much energy, it actually punches through the Earth's atmosphere, carrying portions of the Earth's crust.
Some chunks of Earth even make it to the moon, or go crashing into other planets. But the rest falls back.
That material, however, that does rain back down towards the Earth begins to envelope the Earth and crashes back into the top of the atmosphere around the entire world. When that happens, it is like trillions upon trillions of meteors hitting the atmosphere all at the same time.
The heavens open in a horrible rain of fire. As the meteors fall, the sky gets hotter and hotter. Everything on the surface below suddenly faces the very real possibility of being broiled alive. To understand the after effects of the impact, geologists visit sites like Trinidad State Park, nestled in southeastern Colorado. Here, we can find physical evidence of the alleged dinosaur killer.
The impact mass extinction hypothesis is, I think, one of the most robust hypotheses because it is a testable hypothesis. And in science, that is a very important part of any hypothesis. And here, we can test that idea and extract evidence from the rock record.
65 million years ago, this exact spot on Earth was a front row seat for the end of an age. Scientists refer to the last days of the dinosaurs as the Cretaceous period, and call the succeeding age, which includes the rise of mammals, the Tertiary. What is known as the Cretaceous Tertiary, or KT boundary, divides the two eras.
If we take a look at these rocks, we find evidence of dinosaurs and other organisms that occupied their world. In the rocks higher up in this outcrop, we have a material that was deposited during the Tertiary, long after dinosaurs were extinguished and the world was a completely different place. Right in between these two units, right at the KT boundary, we have this very important white strip of rock. This is the KT boundary rock, and this contains evidence that tells us what happened to extinguish the dinosaurs.
Within this thin band here in Colorado, scientists have found bits of extraterrestrial meteorite mixed with pieces of Mexican rock, well over 1,000 miles away from the crater site. Although this part of the dinosaurs' world did not suffer from a direct impact, it did not escape the Grim Reaper's reach.
One finds small traces of charcoal and soot both indications that there were wildfires and not only elsewhere in the world, but precisely in this part of the world. In addition, the sediments above indicate that the landscape is completely erased of vegetation. There aren't bushes, there are no longer trees.
But the sequence of events spelled out by the impact theory may not be revealing the truth. And man's destiny hangs in the balance. Beneath our cities, farms, and forests, etched into the ground we walk on, and the mountains above our heads, the remnants of an earthly apocalypse from 65 million years ago haunt humanity. Many scientists believe that the extinction of the dinosaurs began then, in a flash, when a meteorite landed near the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. On this day, over 1,000 miles away in western North America, duck-billed dinosaurs are feeding, while carnivorous feathered dinosaurs scamper underfoot. Suddenly, the sky above their heads begins to glow. As the leftover debris from the impact re-enters the atmosphere, it heats. Below its trajectory, the temperature jumps a few hundred degrees in minutes. It gets hotter than a charcoal grill at full bore. The feathered dinosaurs and duckbills can't withstand the intensity of the sweltering heat.
It actually dries out the vegetation, much like wood in a kiln, and spontaneously ignites it.
If you dig right through the surface of the Earth throughout most of North America, you actually encounter a layer of carbon, perhaps charred ash from the firestorm that hit North America. We now know the ultimate fate of the dinosaurs. They were barbecued by that meteor or comet that slammed into Mexico.
Meteor fragments cascade over the planet for 4 days and 4 nights. New wildfires spark. By some estimates, half of the world's forests burn to the ground.
If you want to actually cause dramatic biological effects, you attack the base of the food chain. On continental regions, if you burn away the vegetation, you've done just that.
By some projections, the fires release 10,000 billion tons each of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane. That's equivalent to 3,000 years of modern fossil fuel burning in a matter of weeks. Pollution suffocates the atmosphere. When it does rain, it is corrosively acidic, and the world's ecosystems take another hit. Acid rain destroys plant life and poisons lakes, rivers, and ponds. Worldwide, marine plants and animals suffer.
The atmosphere above us is now completely choked with dusty debris from the impact event, enhanced by soot that's risen from the fires, enhanced further by these sulfuric acid aerosols that were launched from the impact site.
With the sun obscured, Earth plunges into darkness and chills dramatically. The hand of the cosmic killer continues its work as it reaches for the world's dinosaurs not affected by fire.
Those are dinosaurs that wouldn't have been wiped out in the impact event. They would have been sitting there wondering what the heck's going on with our climate. You know, this year seems unusually cloudy and cold. What's happening here?
The world became a very dark place for a period of time. As the darkness persisted, of course, the plants died, and that in turn would have affected the animals themselves.
If you annihilate the plant communities across vast areas of the landscape, it's like shutting down all the grocery stores. There's nowhere to go to get your fresh Fruits and vegetables.
With nothing to eat, the herbivores die. When the herbivores are dead, they go to carnivores. So certainly within 3 months, I'm sure every dinosaur on the planet was dead.
Among the first victims are the largest plant eaters, like Triceratops. The situation is desperate. This Triceratops herd is starving. Many are already dead. The survivors haven't eaten anything for many days. This one is so weak and its pangs of hunger so intense, it has decided to eat rocks.
When faced with starvation, of course, animals can do some pretty amazing things, and I think it's quite evident that a starving animal would eat anything it could to basically make the feeling go away.
It's worse for the adolescents. Their growing bodies crave food. They can't go as long as the adults without eating. Worse still, with fewer and fewer young, the entire species is threatened. As their numbers dwindle, the meat eaters that prey on them begin to suffer as well. The largest meat eaters starve first. Less and less prey remains for each individual predator. And with fewer meals to go around, there are fewer predators who can survive. The last T-Rex, the rarest predator, dies within just weeks of the impact. But the consequences of the impact continue to plague the planet.
When we talk about a mass extinction event, we also have to talk about what happened in the oceans and the seaways of the world. 75% of the species that existed in the world's oceans were extinguished at exactly the same time that dinosaurs disappeared.
Just as the effects of the impact obliterate the base of the food chain on land, they do the same in the oceans. Prolonged darkness kills plankton, an oceanic food staple. Some types of mollusks and primitive squid won't make it out alive.
Acid rain could have initially fallen about a week after the impact event, but it may have occurred at an enhanced rate for periods up to 10 years.
Even so, some of the impact-related pollutants cling to the atmosphere. After the impact dust settles, the Earth suffers from oppressive greenhouse temperatures and horrible droughts. Scientists who subscribe to the impact theory estimate it took over 100,000 years for the terrestrial ecosystem to recover, and 3 million years for the oceans to return to normal. By that time, though, the dinosaurs were gone.
This is not a simple story of extinction. That is, you cannot think of this as a gun and a bullet killing an organism. It wasn't that type of process. It was such a dramatic environmental assault on the Earth's surface that it was able to affect all of these ecosystems regardless of where they were on the Earth's surface. So if you ask the question, what caused this organism or this particular part of the Earth's surface to be extinguished, there isn't a single answer. And therefore, this is a process that affected not only the Tyrannosaurus rex or the duck-billed hadrosaurs that migrated across Colorado, but it affected plants and animals both on land and in the sea, wherever they were around the world.
What if a meteorite as big as the dinosaur killer hit today? It would leave a hole in the Earth big enough to smash everything from New York City to Philadelphia. And that would be just the beginning.
When you have an asteroid hit, it throws up huge amounts of dust into the skies. Crops are going to fail, absolutely going to fail. Without crops, you've got a lot of starving humans.
At minimum, several billion people would die. And we would be in for a struggle for mere existence.
An asteroid impact should have left a wasteland of dead dinosaurs. But this is where the impact theory runs into a problem.
If the theory is correct, then that layer, 66 million or a little less, should be full of dead dinosaurs. I mean, full. They all died in a day or a week. You should have millions of dead dinosaurs in this impact zone. How many dead dinosaurs do we actually have worldwide in the impact zone? Rounding off. None. Goose eggs. Not a one. It's an elaborate crime scene theory where the victims are already dead. They're already dead.
Could it be that something else killed the dinosaurs? If so, might this same something spell disaster for human civilization? A relentless onslaught of after-effects caused by a mountain-sized fireball crashing into prehistoric Mexico 65 million years ago did end the dinosaurs. Or so goes the theory. Could it be wrong?
The problem sometimes is that people who want to have the single impact theory don't know much about plants and animals, and they'll put out scenarios that, unfortunately, don't fit with what we have in the fossil record or what we know about modern biology.
According to the single impact theory, the meteorite resulted in downpours of corrosive acid rain that contributed to the mass extinction. If this is really what happened, animals living in or near the water should have been especially hard hit. And if that's the case, this creature shouldn't be alive.
As you can see, because this little animal's breathing, it's not plastic, it's a living tree frog, and its ancient relatives lived with the dinosaurs some 65 million years ago. Amphibians are extremely sensitive to environmental conditions, for example, acid rain, because they live and or breed in the water. So they're sort of like the canary in the coal mine, and what this indicates is that there could not have been very strong acid rain, because that would have disrupted their life cycle completely.
The survival of tree frogs isn't the only evidence that casts doubt on the single impact theory. Curiously, what lived and what died after impact doesn't fit a neat pattern.
Sharks do very poorly. Most of those become extinct. Bony fishes, some survive, some don't. Crocodiles and alligators themselves survive. One of the groups that did the best in terms of survival are turtles. Something like 18 species of aquatic turtles survived the Cretaceous-Tertiary boundary. There's one land turtle that didn't survive, and that helped be living in the water, like this modern alligator snapper. It had ancient relatives, in fact, in the Cretaceous. So it obviously survived because it's here today.
The survival of turtles also suggests the possibility that Earth never descended into the prolonged deep freeze described by supporters of the single impact theory. Cold-blooded animals, like turtles and lizards, can't generate their own body heat. And therefore, most would probably be doomed if subjected to an unusual cold spell.
So whatever climate change existed at the end of the Cretaceous wasn't big enough to freeze a turtle. If you can't freeze a turtle, you can't freeze a T-Rex. You just can't.
The climate may have changed, but maybe not as drastically as the impact theory proposes.
If it gets real cold all of a sudden, I think there'll be some serious die-off, and I think there will be problems. But if it happens over a long-range period, I think a lot of animals that we know them today would adapt.
Another pillar of the impact theory is that pervasive darkness starved the world's plant life, resulting in a massive food shortage for the largest animals. But insects need plants too, and they didn't have much trouble at all.
There are a number of groups of insects like the crickets and grasshoppers and beetles and things that are really exposed to the outside. And if there was something that came and wiped out all the life on the face of the Earth, the insects certainly would have suffered. But they don't seem to have. At the end of the Cretaceous, all the insect families go right through. You know, wasn't this meteor, if it decimated all this life on the surface of the planet, how come all these insects are still around today?
There's more evidence from the fossil record that the impact event may not have been as severe as first believed. Some dinosaurs survive to this day.
What I'm holding in my hands is a living dinosaur. This animal is a white-bellied stork, very young, and he'll soon grow up to be, I guess, about 1.5 feet tall, something like that. And when we say that he's really a dinosaur, what we mean is that dinosaurs, the group, gave rise to birds.
I understand if someone looks at a Tyrannosaurus rex and then at a pigeon and wonders how could this be possible. But you have to remember that there are millions of years of evolution separating these two species. We have plenty of evidence indicating that birds evolved from some small meat-eating dinosaurs. That evidence comes from the shape of the bones, dinosaurs with feathers, and we have birds with teeth and long bony tails. So we have been able to fill that gap, that huge anatomical gap.
Any theory has to be able to explain why the birds survived and the other dinosaurs didn't. So it can't be a simple, single answer that an asteroid hit and killed all the dinosaurs but left these guys intact.
Maybe the effects of a meteorite impact on its own weren't as powerful as some think. Then is it just a coincidence that the dinosaurs vanished at roughly the moment the meteorite arrived? Some scientists believe that a different threat had already fatally weakened the dinosaurs, and inevitably, humanity will need to confront it as well. It seems only fitting that the disappearance of the ferocious dinosaurs would require a sudden catastrophic disaster. But such a scenario can't explain what scientists working along the picturesque Red Deer River Valley in the Badlands of Alberta, Canada, have uncovered. Dinosaurs were already vanishing for millions of years before the meteorite struck the planet.
The Red Deer River is arguably one of the very best dinosaur sites anywhere in the world. And we have almost 40 species of dinosaurs represented at this level in time, which is about 15 million years before dinosaurs disappear. So that's incredibly rich. Up the Red Deer River, you have younger rocks. And in those rocks, we see that there's only about 25 species of dinosaurs left. As we continue along the Red Deer River, we get into the terminal Cretaceous beds, and we've only got about 6 species of dinosaurs left.
Why was the Cretaceous world so hostile to dinosaur life? At the Royal Tyrrell Museum, situated in another section of Alberta's Badlands, Canadian scientists may have found a cause for the mysterious disappearances.
You started having climatic fluctuations. You had alternating periods of really warm temperatures and really cold temperatures.
Generally, warmer temperatures support a wider variety of lifestyles, and therefore a greater number of species.
If you go in the tropics where it's really warm, we have a tremendous number of different species. There's evidence that actually in periods when the world was warm, you have more species of dinosaurs. When you get to a colder climate, then usually the diversity of animals decreases. So that's probably what happened at the end of the Cretaceous.
One of the patterns that we noticed right off the bat as we went through our rock record here through the last 7 million years of the age of dinosaurs is that temperature-sensitive animals, as fossils, just drop out. And then they come back into the rock record higher up. That swing from present to absent seemed to be happening more and more frequently as we went up through the rock record.
It's easy to think that dinosaurs were evolutionary losers, obsolete creatures in a rapidly changing world. After all, you won't find a T-Rex at your local zoo. But that's not why they disappeared.
Dinosaurs were always changing, always adapting, always evolving into new forms. We actually don't know of any dinosaur anywhere in the world that lasted more than, say, 2 or 3 million years.
The arrival of new dinosaur species is what helped perpetuate one of the most successful and lengthy dynasties in our planet's history. Human civilization, by comparison, still barely warrants a footnote. For some perspective, if we express all of the years that span the entirety of the age of dinosaurs in a physical timeline stretching across North America, then the Pacific coast represents the moment the first dinosaurs appeared on Earth, some 220 million years ago. On the other coast, the Empire State Building in New York City marks present-day life in the 21st century. On this scale, every mile signifies about 50,000 years. The age of the dinosaurs continues from California until Chicago. It's not until we reach Newark, New Jersey, less than 20 miles from the Empire State Building, that humans appear on Earth. Written human history doesn't start until about half a block away. A human life on this scale takes up just a few feet. And yet, with all those years of evolutionary progress, suddenly the road ended.
The bizarre thing at the end of the Cretaceous is all those dinosaur families disappear. All the horned dinosaur families, all the theropod dinosaur families, all disappear.
In a cruel twist of fate, some dinosaurs may have been too well adapted to the wild climate fluctuations. For some species, their greatest strength led to their inevitable destruction. The greater bulk of the largest dinosaur species would have helped them tolerate wilder temperature extremes. The elephant, the largest land animal alive today, provides an example.
They can be 12, 13 feet tall at the shoulder, weigh 6, 7, 8, 9 tons, so they get very, very big.
When you have a larger body mass, if you're looking at short-term temperature changes between, say, day and night or between seasons, it doesn't affect you as much because your body temperature doesn't change as fast.
They just basically were so massive that when they were warmed up by sun rays, they just stayed warm.
This may be why we find large dinosaur species during the shifting climates of the late Cretaceous. Greater mass, however, also creates some important disadvantages.
When you're really big, you essentially slow down your life. You mate less often, you have to have fewer children, and you have a longer life. But by having fewer children, essentially what happens, it means if there's a short-term change that's quite severe, then you're not able to adapt fast enough, either as a species or as an individual. And the chances of becoming extinct are much greater.
Elephants require a 22-month gestation period and typically give birth to just one calf at a time. In contrast, rat pregnancies last only about 22 days, and one female rat could have as many as 15,000 descendants in just 1 year. Larger body mass also requires more food.
It takes a lot of energy to keep them going. They have to have food, they have to have water.
When you get big, you usually need to focus on food that will bring you a lot of nutrients.
If you've got an elephant on very high quality elephant food, it needs 10 times, 15 times as much as its own body weight per 12 months. Now, if the food is crummy, it's dry grass, it needs a lot more.
Maintaining that weight forced the largest dinosaurs to evolve the optimal tools to get the most bang for their buck out of their available food sources. The hundreds of teeth lining the jaws of duck-billed dinosaurs cropped leaves from trees with wood chipper-like efficiency. It helped them grow to immense sizes, measuring up to 40 feet tall and weighing as much as 3 tons. These titanic optimized eating machines with relatively small populations contained a critical flaw, though.
Well, what if there are no leaves? What if everything's been dropped because you've gone into essentially wintertime conditions worldwide? There's nothing for those animals to eat. They're not adapted to dig up roots and survive that way. Other animals that were smaller possibly could have done that.
If climate change was driving their communities towards large size, it's almost as though dinosaurs were being set up for failure.
Once the big herbivores starved and died, then all the meat disappeared for the big carnivores. They couldn't, of course, go and hunt smaller animals because they were too big to actually catch them, too slow. So they would die. They're the ones that are least well adapted for rapid change.
Unfortunately for the dinosaurs, this is exactly what happened when the fist of fate, in the form of a mammoth meteorite, delivered a body blow to the planet. The threat of climate change and its potential cataclysmic effects looms over humanity. Rising oceans, mighty hurricanes, and extreme drought among them. But one model for dinosaur extinction suggests that its effects are more systemic.
I don't feel that if the asteroid had hit earlier, when they had better diversity, that dinosaurs would have necessarily gone extinct.
In this extinction scenario, the meteorite delivers a knockout blow, not to a mighty dinosaur empire, but rather to a crumbling dynasty.
And that's a warning for us because we're looking at a time now where we're losing a lot of our biodiversity. And the question is this setting us up for something really catastrophic to happen? Maybe dinosaurs have a clue on that one.
It may be too late. Some scientists believe our world today is already undergoing a mass extinction. Over half of all reptile and insect species are in danger, as well as 3/4 of all flowering plants. Amphibians, like frogs and salamanders, have survived on this planet for over 300 million years, even outlasting dinosaurs. Within the last quarter century, however, hundreds of their kind have gone extinct.
Global climate change has the potential to be the straw that broke the camel's back for a great many species on Earth. A large number of species are living in isolated little habitats that remain as we've taken over large parts of the rest of the Earth. If these habitats are under climate stress, there's no place for the animals to go. When the habitats shrink enough, however, you have very little resiliency. And that's what worries me.
As species disappear, we may be following dinosaurs down a dead-end road. However, there may be nothing we as humans can do about a future greenhouse or icehouse world. A random natural cycle may play a part.
We know that where I'm sitting right now was under 1/2 mile of ice 10,000 years ago. We also know that roughly 10,000 years from now, this area will again be under 1/2 mile of ice. We're in between 2 glaciations.
These may be the result of a slight wobble in the Earth's rotation as it orbits the sun.
And by looking at the accumulation of the wobbling of the Earth, it does seem to correlate with the known ice age cycles. In some sense, the rise of human civilization was an accident caused by the melting of the ice 10,000 years ago. And we have another good 10,000 years before we either leave the Earth or go underground.
This may have contributed to the loss of dinosaur species. However, this scenario still relies on a meteorite screaming in from the heavens. But some scientists believe that the meteorite might just be a red herring.
We have no evidence that any single dinosaur or dinosaur species, except birds, lived long enough to be whacked by the meteorite. None. This you should find deeply disturbing.
In other words, dinosaurs may have already been extinct by the time the meteorite struck. If the dinosaur world ended in a bang, then where are all of the carcasses? Supporters of the impact theory argue that much of the evidence has been lost to the sands of time.
It's very naive to say if it was a catastrophic event, we should find all the dead carcasses lying one next to the other.
There may have been a dinosaur wandering over there a mile downstream. There may have been a herd of dinosaurs 2 or 3 miles upstream, but right here, where we're standing, where the rock record is preserved, there might not be a dinosaur bone. When we look at impact debris that can clearly be linked to an extraterrestrial body, we don't expect to see that debris covering a dinosaur bone bed.
But could the lack of bones mean something else?
10 billion dinosaurs died at 65.8 million years, but for some reason, none of them were preserved. None of them. Do you buy this? Do you buy that? That's like the St. Valentine's Day massacre. If all the bodies were there the day before the guys with the submachine gun showed up, wouldn't there be a problem in the timeline? The guys are already dead. You know, they're already dead.
If the dinosaurs were already dead before impact, what killed them off? A different theory blames a menace the dinosaurs couldn't even see. Scientists are sounding the alarm that the world may be undergoing a dangerous transformation. They warn that if the world is indeed growing hotter, one consequence may be that ocean levels could rise and drown coastlines. The opposite effect might also be catastrophic. The dinosaur world suffered from a collapse of sea levels, and the effects may have led to the mass extinction. During the age of dinosaurs, ocean levels were much higher than they are today. In North America, for example, everything from the Rocky Mountains to what is today the Mississippi River lay underwater. Then, mysteriously, sea levels declined and disrupted the environment.
You start getting a landmass being built. And under those circumstances, what happens is that you get a more continental climate. As the sea withdrew, you started getting colder winters, hotter summers, cooler nights, and warmer days.
Falling sea levels also exposed new terrain. This created land bridges that connected continents once separated by water and opened the way for a dinosaur killer that may have ravaged life on Earth many times before. The first time it struck may have been 250 million years ago, during an age known as the Permian. Fossilized remains from that era can be found near the town of Seymour, in the wide open spaces of north-central Texas.
Most things that lived during that time died. It's the worst mass extinction that's ever existed on the face of the Earth.
The mass death of the Permian carries special significance because it was the first extinction for life on land.
This is up to 200 million and change earlier than T-Rex, earlier than the great dinosaur extinction. Like following a serial killer. You gotta look at the first one and then go up in time. Gotta look at the first one.
Scientists working here believe they've found a link between this extinction and the one at the end of the Cretaceous that wiped out the dinosaurs.
If you want to know what killed the dinosaurs, got to look at the very first extinction, and that brings you right here.
Dr. Bakker and his team claim that a global pandemic of sickness and disease may have ravaged the Permian world. And when they looked at the factors they believe led to the outbreak of the Permian, they discovered similar ones at the end of the Cretaceous. A pattern emerged. However, according to this sickness and disease extinction scenario, the climate changes involved with dropping sea levels were not what overwhelmed the dinosaurs.
You see, the problem with the climate model for any mass extinction, if you change the climate from hot to cold or dry to wet, you might hurt some big dinosaurs, some big mammals. The other half will love it. There's not one simple worldwide climate change you could produce to kill all elephants and rhinos and hippos and giraffes and water buffalo. Can't do it. Can't do it.
As water levels fell, separate continents became linked and eliminated borders between creatures.
If a bunch of big species from Asia invades North America and gets down to Texas, all epidemiological hell breaks loose. Each foreign species can be a pest, and they bring their fleas, ticks and tapeworms and nematodes. They bring a host of pests with them.
The globe looks different today than it did during the Permian. The outer crust of our planet consists of plates that float over the layers of rock underneath. Each of these plates moves in different directions at different speeds. The continents of the Permian era were all stuck together, forming the giant landmass of Pangaea.
You could walk from here, Seymour, Texas, to Morocco. You could walk from Massachusetts to India. You could walk from Alabama to Australia without ever crossing an ocean.
We can find some of the same geographic danger signs in the age of dinosaurs. Newly formed land bridges incited a dangerous wave of dino immigration.
Suddenly, we have a connection, a continental connection between North America and South America. The duck-billed dinosaurs that are common here in Alberta are suddenly appearing down in Argentina. The sauropod dinosaurs, which had already become extinct in North America, suddenly appear again in North America, in Texas and Utah and places like that. Those big sauropods are in fact migrants coming from South America, using the same land bridge that allowed the hadrosaurs to go south.
Because the largest animals were capable of traveling the farthest, they put themselves at greatest risk.
Big animals have a natural ability to spread. Elephants, as soon as new species of elephants evolved in the age of mammals, they'd spread from Africa to Europe, Europe to India, and some made it from India to Siberia to North America and all the way down to Terra del Fuego. Very impressive. Being big confers that power of tourism.
Once they're on the move, organisms can cause problems simply by disturbing the natural cycle of the environment they're invading.
The invading species is a danger for a bunch of reasons. It could kill you, could be a new predator. Could rob you of food, could rob you of places to make a nest, of your young. It could chase your young. It could squash your young. And those are the least dangerous things.
Infinitely more destructive are the illnesses delivered and picked up by nature's migrants. An animal's natural defenses developed over generations for a certain environment may turn out to be completely useless in another.
Moose and deer make each other sick. African elephants and Indian elephants make each other sick because their immune systems have evolved to handle different pests.
The mixing of species can cause every meal to become potentially lethal.
But every time you eat leaves, grass, branches, fruit, you can get some unwanted microbes who can run amok in your gut, causing you, well, for instance, diarrhea. Diarrhea can dehydrate an adult male in a week and kill an infant in a day. Diarrhea is the symptom that kills more humans than any other symptom. It can be caused by many things. But alas, people die of diarrhea all the time. Diarrhea ain't no joke.
The nefarious range of afflictions affecting the largest dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous reached debilitating levels. Some of nature's smallest creatures only made things worse. As if teleported to the present by a time machine, these very insects, preserved perfectly in fossilized amber, once walked, flew, and even fed on dinosaurs. Dr. George Poinar believes that the pathogens insects carried assaulted dinosaurs relentlessly from all angles and ultimately played a serious role in their demise.
And these are 3 nematodes that came from a capsule in the body cavity of a cockroach. Cockroaches will eat the eggs of these, and then if a dinosaur came along and ate the cockroach, it would get infected.
They look harmless, but once inside the body, these worms grew into dinosaur assassins.
This is usually the typical way in which these things are found. Here's one, for instance, here.
Being stricken by stomach worm is gruesome and torturous. The nematode eggs start in the stomach, but work their way into the lung tissue. This induces a coughing fit. The eggs, ejected from the lungs, return to the stomach, where they hatch and grow into worms. As they grow larger and fill the stomach, the duckbill loses its appetite and weakens. The worms can even cause organs to rupture.
The largest nematode today is about 27 feet, so it's possible for these nematodes to reach large sizes under the right conditions.
Exotic biting insects also targeted dinosaurs mercilessly. They came for blood and often left behind deadly illnesses. The sandfly reigned as one of the most successful dinosaur hunters of its day, in part because it developed the perfect utensils for dino dining.
And if you look very carefully at the mandibles of the sandfly, you see that they resemble the edges of common steak knives today.
As sandflies arrived to torment this Triceratops, they put their steak knife mandibles to good use.
So what we have are a pair of mandibles, and first one is inserted a little bit into the flesh, and then the other one is inserted into the flesh. You have these blades going back and forth very quickly, and they simply cut through the flesh. It's really a marvel of invention.
Targeting the most sensitive areas, the sandflies swarm the soft tissues around the eyes, nose, and mouth. According to Poinar, dinosaurs may not have been able to defend themselves against the fleets of flying insects.
I think the dinosaurs would have essentially been sitting ducks to these insects. What the dinosaurs really have in order to get rid of these, to shoo the flies, supposedly. I mean, it didn't have long tails like horses. You often see horses standing back to head, where the tail of one brushes the flies from the head of the other one.
As sandflies gorge on blood, they inject a dangerous illness called leishmania. It's a disease that exists to this day. Modern sandfly cousins are carriers. It travels the blood, attacking organs, and causes internal bleeding and death. This adult Triceratops is sick, but she is just one of many in a herd suffering from a virulent strain of leishmania. Blotches and sores mean she's in a badly weakened state. Dinosaur species were very closely related to each other. Therefore, once a killer disease got hold of one species, it may have spread to others with frightening ease. Trailing T-Rexes see an opportunity. Their hunger will soon be satiated. Mealtime for the predators begins. As they eat, the virus coursing through the sickened Triceratops infects the scavengers. This will be their last supper. Ultimately, the sandfly terrorists will decimate the rest of the Triceratops herd as well. This one insect and one disease could have wiped out thousands of dinosaurs. But it would take more than that to tackle the entire species.
Multiple diseases, multiple pests, multiple invasive species, 10, 20, 30, 40. They could penetrate every habitat and wreak havoc.
It was a combination of diseases that spread throughout the dinosaur population.
This is what I'd like to do. I think this is very important. Call a timeout to all thinking and publishing by paleontologists about extinction for 5 years. And every one of us should be forced to intern at the Bronx Zoo, San Diego Wild Animal Park, and Wyoming Fish and Game, and learn what guys who worry about extinction of living animals are concerned about. And it's not a meteorite. Disease, pests, competition between African and Indian critters, that's number one.
The power of disease to shape world history can be found even in comparatively recent times. Nothing has killed more people. Not natural disasters, not famine, and not even wars.
The possibility of a great plague, of course, resonates with human history because we've had plagues in the past. In some cases, they wiped out whole pockets of civilization.
In Ireland, when you had this potato famine, you know, there was a disease that came in that killed all the potatoes. People began starving, and then you had a number of diseases that came in and wiped out a large number of the population.
People observing this from the healthful safety of modern civilization forget the power of deadly microbes.
They're living happily and nothing has happened to them. If they go down into the tropics like in Africa or Asia today and look around and see the kind of things that are occurring, suddenly they get a different view. Disease takes on a different aspect. Disease then becomes a controlling factor, not something that we control, but something that controls us.
Technology provides the land bridges of our time, and teamed with environmental changes, could expose humanity to new diseases. We may be on the precipice of a new global plague. If disease extinguished the dinosaurs, could it do the same to human beings?
Plague has the possibility that an asteroidal impact doesn't have, and that is of wiping out absolutely everybody, but it's very unlikely. For one thing, pockets down in nuclear submarines at the bottom of the sea could simply wait the plague out. until all previous victims are already dead.
The scientific community, however, hasn't embraced the idea of a Cretaceous-era dinosaur-killing pandemic.
To see the entire group being annihilated by disease is a little hard to swallow. With a global cosmopolitan distribution of dinosaurs in different dinosaur groups, nothing that we know of on this planet works homogeneously over the whole surface of the planet.
And how do you explain that those diseases killed seagoing animals like marine reptiles, ammonites, animals that are so distantly related that they probably wouldn't have been affected by diseases that grew on land?
The answer may lie in another Cretaceous-era apocalyptic force, one that vomits the fires of hell all over a helpless dinosaur world. These jagged steppe-like mountains of central India, known as the Deccan Traps, contain the leftovers of another dinosaur-era disaster, one perhaps many times more ruinous than the meteorite impact or disappearing seas. According to Gerta Keller, a mass extinctions expert from Princeton University, the key to the extinction of the dinosaurs can be found there. Although calm and peaceful today, 65 million years ago, India was the epicenter of destruction. A massive outpouring of volcanic lava formed this entire range. It covers 200,000 square miles, an area about the size of Texas, and its tallest peaks reach over a mile high. It started when plumes of molten magma from deep within the Earth burst through the surface.
High columns of fires blasted gas and ash into the stratosphere. And on the bottom, you had these lava sheets flowing out and covering the area. Miles and miles, hundreds, thousands of miles.
These volcanic eruptions called flood basalts are not equivalent to Mount St. Helens or some volcano that we see in the news. These are great fissures in the Earth. The crust of the Earth splits apart. Lava pours out.
As destructive as the lava flows were, it was the noxious gases belching out that brought the ultimate extermination. Human history provides a harrowing example. On June 8, 1783, near the town of Laki in Iceland, a volcano erupted. It lasted for 8 months, with brutal consequences.
The sun turned blood red, and a very thick haze covered essentially not just Iceland, but spread over Europe. It instantly killed 50% of the livestock. After that, poison rain fell from the sky. Thick with ash, sulfur, and salt, it coated all the plants, which turned bright yellow and withered and died. It caused enormous famine, and about 25% of the population died.
The haze disrupted worldwide weather patterns. That summer, Europe endured unprecedented high temperatures. And the following winter brought record cold to as far away as North America. As destructive as Laki was, it was nothing but a squirt gun compared to the cannon fire of the Deccan eruptions. They were up to 5,000 times larger and would seem to be a leading dinosaur-killing suspect. But many scientists don't believe that the Deccan eruptions caused the mass extinction. Why? It's the same reason a similar series of eruptions about 17 million years ago from the Columbia Plateau in America's Pacific Northwest didn't cause a mass extinction of its own.
All these are volcanic rocks essentially from one single eruption in the Columbia Plateau basalts. And so they represent one of these pulsed eruptions. And it would have deposited perhaps within days or weeks. When you go further down this mountain, you will find a plateau, which appears to be the break between this eruption and the next.
Each successive pulse created another layer and added a step to the Columbia Formation. And even though the volcanic lava spread out over tens of thousands of square miles, it didn't have the earth-shattering effect you might expect. The reason is that all of the Columbia Plateau pulses took more than 10 million years to form. The long intervals between each eruption allowed the surrounding environment to recover.
If you just have one pulse that lasts for 10 years, it could be washed out within 10 to 100 years afterwards.
But if the next eruption went off before the environment fully recuperated, living conditions would have worsened exponentially. The conventional wisdom held that the Deccan traps were blunted because they erupted over a million-year time frame.
In the last few years, all this has changed. The eruptions now are known to occur over very short time, like 10,000 to 100,000 years.
New dating techniques have revealed that the bulk, up to 80% of the Deccan eruptions, began near the end of the Cretaceous and finished at the time of the mass extinction. In effect, the pulsed explosions of the Deccan volcanoes threw a rapid series of deadly blows to the world's ecosystems. Just one major eruption pulse could have injected as much poison gas into the atmosphere as the Yucatan impact.
Both are catastrophes that would have caused earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, although not global fires, but certainly regional fires, acid rain, poisonous clouds of gas, and cooling.
However, all the pulses taken together would have had the effect of dozens of meteorite impacts spread out over thousands of years. The effects of India's volcanoes engulfed the planet. Keller believes the Deccan volcanoes unleashed poisonous gas clouds that blocked sunlight. Animals in the neighborhood would have struggled to breathe, and rain would have absorbed the airborne gases, wrecking vegetation worldwide as it fell.
Basically, we can say we found the smoking gun. The Deccan volcanism theory becomes the main contender for the mass extinction.
Supervolcanism may even lead to a mass extinction of humans. One of America's most popular tourist destinations happens to sit on top of one of these ticking time bombs. A meteorite impact, climate change, falling sea levels, disease, volcanoes. What killed the dinosaurs? And which scenario most threatens human civilization?
There's a difference between the kind of catastrophe that could knock us down, maybe kill 90% of humans, 99%, and actually extinguishing humans. Those are two different things. You can wipe out 99% of the cockroaches in your house, and there's still going to be a breeding pair somewhere.
It's tempting to think that whatever knocked out the dinosaurs could never be a problem today. But what's bubbling beneath Yellowstone National Park right now proves otherwise. The park sits on a vast reservoir of magma, essentially a giant volcano. Scientists believe it erupts every 600,000 years, and the last eruption was 640,000 years ago. We're overdue.
A gigantic supervolcano explosion of Yellowstone could have the same effects as an asteroid impact, in which case billions would die and the survivors would struggle.
Humans might soon be forced to face an environment like the one that may have assaulted the dinosaurs during the Deccan eruptions. On the other hand, the dinosaurs could have been the victims of an ancient exterminator, one that keeps coming back and might strike us next.
Every 26 million years or so, we're not quite sure, there seems to be a massive extinction. And so the question is, what in the world could come back every 26 million years?
A suspect looms at the distant fringes of our solar system. A horde of comets, giant orbiting ice cubes known as the Oort cloud, could be responsible for mass death. As our solar system travels through the Milky Way, it dips into and out of the dense dust-filled central band of our galaxy roughly every 26 million years.
It'll encounter the dust, and that'll jiggle the Oort cloud. These stationary ice cubes in space will then be jostled and will come raining down toward the sun, creating a comet storm that could perhaps wipe out the planet Earth. So the motion of the solar system in the galaxy, like a hobby horse in a merry-go-round, could in fact have wiped out the dinosaurs. If so, that means we're due for another big one in perhaps another 13 million years. The solar system is like a shooting gallery. Look at the moon. Every night it comes out, and you can see pockmarks from heavy bombardment that took place on the moon. If you take a look at Mars, you see also evidence of enormous, gigantic comets that rain down on the red planet. So we have ample evidence that in the past, the solar system was a shooting gallery.
An aerial bombardment crushing our civilization might still be millions of years away. But another potential dinosaur killer, also born in the depths of space, may not give us any warning.
Well, human extinction could be brought about by nasty things from space.
Whenever a massive star larger than our sun runs out of fuel, it collapses under its own weight and erupts into a supernova.
If a star explodes within 25 light years of the planet Earth, it could very well turn life on the surface of the Earth into a hell. If we have this blast of energy coming from a supernova, first of all, it will hit the atmosphere of the Earth and perhaps blow off and destabilize our ozone layer. Without an ozone layer to protect the Earth from harmful ultraviolet radiation, X-ray radiation from the sun, we would be bathed in dangerous radiation.
We might have to live underground and develop crops that can withstand the lack of an ozone layer. It would be one of those intermediate events where billions might die and some would keep going.
Might an exploding star have vanquished the dinosaurs?
A wave of radiation has been found that would have actually passed through this planet about 65 million years ago, which makes it a little suspect that a star did go supernova at the right time to affect the Earth.
The repercussions would have been wicked.
So we're talking about an object that flares up, visible in daytime, and at night, it would outshine even the moon. It would be perhaps the brightest object in the night sky. we would have this rain of harsh radiation coming down on the Earth, wiping out any animals that are exposed to sunlight, exposed to the atmosphere of the planet Earth. Any animals with eyes would be blinded, not to mention horrible sunburns.
There's no doubt that radiation, of course,